Hi, this is Romilly from Golden Circle Designs, and today we're going to work on a stitch called Satin Stitch. You've probably heard of it. It is deceptively simple to learn and deceptively difficult to perfect. In general, it is just a row of straight stitches that line up next to each other. So with the right hand, let's go ahead and show it. What we're going to do is I'm going to start a line of satin stitch right here, and we're going to go from right to left rather. Again, that particular direction is for ease of using the sewing method. I don't recommend the sewing method with satin stitch for the simple reason that, let's see if we can get this a little bit closer. There we go. For the simple reason that it's difficult to keep the stitches in line. So, excuse me, we're going to bring the thread up to the top. We're going to work from bottom to top. You can also work from top to bottom if that's easier for you, and make a vertical stitch there. They can also go horizontally, but they just go from one line vertically lining up all of the thread so that it fills in the area. If you're working with a design that's drawn onto your fabric, you're going to want to make sure that your stitches cover the line. For example, when I'm done here, I have not covered this line. This little line here, or here I've worked right inside it. If that was a line on a design, like for a leaf, I probably wouldn't want my pen line to show. So instead of putting it inside the line, like I have been, I would stitch it, we'll start a separate section, I would stitch it slightly below that line, and I would stitch it to the top above that line and cover that pen line. This is the basic stitch for Satin Stitch. In a future video, I'll talk about some tricks for making it smooth and for making it more even and for stitching different forms instead of just a line. But that's the basics, and we'll now go and look at it on the left hand. Okay, here we are with Satin Stitch on the left hand, and I'm going to work it in between these two lines, between this one and this one. It's just a vertical or horizontal stitch, just a straight stitch, up and down, and they're made very close together. So that you fill the area that you're coloring in. These work better on relatively small areas. In other words, I wouldn't want to make a satin stitch that was 2 inches long or 1 inch wide. You probably don't want to make your stitches any longer than about 1/2 inch. So any design that you want to stitch that's larger than that, you will want to use a different stitch, or you will want to divide it into segments and work the satin stitch that way. Oops. So as you see, as you stitch, that covers the area, and it makes it look like satin because it's a smooth, and no matter what kind of thread you use, if it's not a matte thread, if it's an embroidery floss or a silk, it looks like satin. So you can also, what I've done here is I've worked inside the line, this small line here, and this here, and this small line here. If I was working with a pencil line or a pen line drawing on of a leaf or another design, I would want to cover up that pen line. And if you're going to cover up the line, you need to go outside of it, and then outside of it again over it. So you stitched it a little bit longer. So a satin stitch design will be a little bit larger than any of the design that you've drawn. And that's something to think about if it makes a difference that it's, you know, that one thread width wider. But it's a relatively easy stitch. It can be a little bit tricky to make the edges even, and if you're going to work with that, making the edges even, you can, if you're having trouble with it, you can cover it with a stem stitch afterwards or a back stitch. We'll talk about, in another video, we'll talk about more different shapes to stitch with with satin stitch and different variations on it. So thank you, and we'll see you next week.